Felix, it's so good to see you again, to connect with you again. Our friendship has grown over the years. I've known you for 10 plus years and watched your family grow. And I know we've kind of separated paths over the last number of years, but it's so good to have you on, and thank you for being open and willing just to share vulnerably about your invisible condition story. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. You and Ted are great friends, and really appreciate this project that you've started to create a voice for these conversations. So yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, you've got just an amazing story. We're going to jump right into it because I think the people who are listening are going to just, I think, be in awe of your diagnosis story. So I won't jump into it. I'll let you just share a bit about you and a bit about your story.
Yeah, appreciate that. So I guess the journey starts about 7 years ago, 2016-ish. We had um, just had our daughter, Abby, and there's nothing really wrong with her eyes or anything like that. But I thought, oh, why don't I just go take her for a checkup at the optometrist? And I didn't have any problems either. I've always had good vision 20/20. But I thought on a whim, oh, yeah, I'll check my eyes too. And when I was doing the exam, the optometrist was saying, oh, hey, like something's kind of like a little off with your eyes. Like there's like some bruising. And I thought nothing of it. But she said, oh, you should go see like the specialist. And uh, I just took her card and um, called them. They made an appointment. And a few days later, I went to this ophthalmologist. Um, and she was doing a bunch of tests. And she said, kind of like a nonchalant voice, like, oh, no, you should go do some blood tests. And I thought this kind of routine. And I didn't go immediately. I didn't think there was much urgency, but she called me back a few days later, like, oh, like you should go see a blood test like now. And so I just hopped on, made an appointment, and um, it got sent in over the weekend. And uh, I went down on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday she called me, and she said, "Hey, like I usually don't work on weekends, but I just want to let you know that the results came back, and um, you have the signs of leukemia." And I was just so shocked. I thought, like, oh, I went from a optometrist meeting a week ago now into the specialist. Now I have leukemia, and it was like a massive shock to myself. And I kind of stewed on it the whole Sunday. And um, the next day, my wife and I were going to our staff meeting, and uh, Jessica noticed something was off. And she's like, what's going on? Like, just pull over. And I just kind of shared what she had shared with me on the phone about my diagnosis. And thankfully, um, our staff team is amazing. And when we drove over there afterwards, like we just spent the time um, sharing and crying, and them taking some time to pray for us. So yeah, even in a time of significant upheaval, just having that support was huge. Um, a few days later, I ended up getting an appointment with um, my oncologist, and she ended up, um, in my case, a hematologist for leukemia, and found out that it's leukemia called chronic myeloid leukemia, which, um, interestingly enough, um, 20 years ago, people with this diagnosis, they would have been probably given like a 3 to 4 year um, trajectory prognosis. But through amazing research from doctors and different researchers, there's the miracle drug called imatinib, and uh, that's what I was able to get on right away. And so that was a huge relief to us. Like, wow, like this miracle drug is going to save my life. And so, uh, basically a week after that, I started taking this daily pill, basically chemotherapy in a pill, and we're on a good trajectory. Uh, and about 2 months later, I was going to the movies with Jessica, and I started feeling this really deep pain. Um, and it felt like my sides were just kind of being destroyed, I guess is the way to describe it. And fortunately, the theater was just across from St. Paul's, and I told them the pain that was going on. It got me right through, and um, I was told by the doctor that I had experienced a rare side effect called gastroparesis, which is basically the stomach stopping. And so, as I did a bunch of tests, the only factor that they came up with was it's due to this drug that was causing this problem. And that was super shocking and discouraging. This life-saving drug I'm supposed to be taking is really making it possible for my body to function. And that was another roller coaster of what ifs and what's going on. And over the next few months, I was able to get into another drug called dasatinib, which is kind of only used on very rare occasions because the first drug is supposed to work for most people, 95% of people. And my hematologist had to get special permission from this board. And so, thankfully, this new drug has been able to help me be in what's called drug-induced remission. So it's been about 6 years since my diagnosis that I've been in that remission, and I think I kind of hold intention. I'm thankful for the remission, for the ongoing healing from that, but I also know it's not a complete cure, and it's something I thought I had to live with the rest of my life, and I kind of live in that in between of, is it going to come back? Is it's not done. It's still there, and so it's kind of odd space to be in, living with hope while also living with a sense of slight dread, I suppose. But yeah, that in a nutshell, diagnosis and where I am today.
Thank you for sharing so openly and vulnerably. We've known each other through that journey, and I remember you being in pain, needing to go to the hospital. I remember once we're in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Hardly snows. We had a snowstorm. I had a truck at the time driving you to the hospital for your treatment, and I think there's so much power in community. And when you're surrounded by people who deeply care and love you, it helps. I mean, it doesn't cure anything, but it definitely helps. So for those who are maybe listening today and are suffering silently, there's a community of people that love you and are willing to support you. So tap into that. I'm curious, Felix, like that tension of living in that medically induced remission, and knowing that if that medication potentially stops, like how have you reconciled that in your mind?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Maybe before I answer that, I do want to thank you personally for that truck ride to get to the hospital, and looking back on the calendar at that time, I was looking at a few of the events, and I noticed Seasons on the Park meal, courtesy of Tim and Tanya. And I remember that you and Tanya just said, "Hey, I know it's a hard time. We want to bless you." And like you said, community and that sense of blessing and shared struggle, that was amazing. So thank you for that. That was really, really, really thoughtful and so appreciated. Um, yeah, the tension. I, myself and yourself were both um, people of faith, and we know that prayer is a huge part of our lives. And in my diagnosis, I found that um, depression is a real thing. Just feeling a sense of what's going on, a sense of hopelessness, and sometimes I've felt, oh, like in order to have a real faith, like, should I be feeling this? And sometimes people might give the impression, oh, in order to have a real faith, you got to be happy and joyous all the time and just believe. And so I think that kind of adds to that tension too. People have said, oh, you're healed and you shouldn't have to worry about it again. But I know this could change at any point. And there's a book in the Bible called the Psalms, and the Psalms are basically a series of poems and songs written by a king named David and a bunch of other people. And I found that amazingly helpful to know that the Psalms are written with a whole spectrum of emotions. Happiness, sure, but doubt, fear, anger, frustration. And I found that as I weighted the uncertainty of my health, that going to read the Psalms and praying through those has been really freeing, knowing that there's others like yourself, like the psalmist written has walked this journey as well. And I don't need to present this perfect image to other people about like everything is going to be okay all the time, because we live in a broken world and that's flawed. And yeah, so I think chatting with folks like yourself, reading the Psalms, being open has given that permission to, hey, things are not okay, they're not perfect, but let's 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 be real with that.
Yeah, thanks again for sharing. Let's be real with that. It's someone who I feel that I'm in drug reduced or induced, sorry, remission with Crohn's.
Mm,
The last drug that was available on the market for me to try was just approved earlier this year. Without it, I would
mm,
have lost all my intestine. So I know that this may come back. It will likely come back. And I think what I'm hearing you saying is we have a choice when we wake up in the morning. Is are we going to live in that fear, or are we going to wake up with a different sense of hope? That sense of that hope that we have from our faith, from Jesus, and saying,
mm,
today might be the day it comes back, but that's not going to stop me from being a good partner, a good father, a good employee, a good community member. Yeah. So, but that also what you also said about depression is real, and how are you doing now?
mm. I think emotionally, mentally, um, a lot better than I have been in the past, and I think that's through great support from friends like yourselves, my wife Jessica, my church community, and I know we were part of the church community for a long time. And one thing I appreciate about yourself and the other members of the group was you didn't see me as Felix cancer patient. You saw me as Felix, who happens to have cancer, and just that care has been huge. And yeah, I think having community, going to counseling, cannot recommend that. um, More, it's just amazing to cross with someone who can walk together. Um, and yeah, seeing different mentors who have really helped me walk through a lot of those doubts and struggles has been amazing. Um, like you said, walking through this pain and struggle, but seeking God throughout. It's like the constant that I can rely on. And more recently, the past this past year, I've been part of a support group for leukemia patients, and that's been very therapeutic in itself. And I kind of avoided it for a long time. I think part of it was survivor's guilt. Like, oh, like what do I have to offer? And what about those who might not make it? But I've actually found that being part of that has been um, just a healing process for me in addressing that survivor's guilt, but also the feedback I've heard from others is as I share my story, they say, "Oh, thank you for sharing. Like I'm newly diagnosed. Like it's so it's, I'm just so freaked out, and I need to know that there's people like you who have walked this path as well." So I definitely am not, like some rainbows and unicorns person and attitude, but I know that okay, this journey I'm on is for a reason, and I want to pay it back to others and offer, that one measure of support, of hope that they might not otherwise have found.
The word hope is emerging as a theme, as well as the underlying theme of vulnerability. Going
Mm.
to a support group is vulnerable. Telling your friends is vulnerable. Seeking counseling and then telling people on a podcast that you sought counseling, that is extremely vulnerable. And I think there's a tie between vulnerability and hope. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the phrase, um, vulnerability unlocks vulnerability. And I found that as I've shed some of that fear of judgment or fear of perceived weakness, that others have really leaned in and offered their own struggles and their sense of with depression or their own challenges. And that in those spaces, we've had a chance to talk about like what is real hope and where do we find hope that endures day after day, and a great opportunity to share about how faith has been a part of my life and how that has been an immense pillar, just like it has been for yours. Not that it's a cure-all and end-all by no means, but an amazing, amazing resource and foundation to share about. So yeah, definitely see a huge correlation there.
Yeah, that phrase, vulnerability unlocks vulnerability. I've seen that through the half a dozen podcast episodes I've released through Invisible Condition. I've seen that through social media, through LinkedIn, especially. Uh, it's amazing how it does unlock others, and it
Mm,
almost gives that sense of permission, which is really the point of
totally.
this entire project. Whatever I'm trying to build here, whatever I'm trying to do is like you said, even before we hit record, this is your normal. And how I live with Crohn's and arthritis and depression, this is my normal. And so
Mm,
we know that others and other people who are recently diagnosed with cancer or Crohn's or whatever you're diagnosed with, there's a new normal for you. And it's going to look different. People are going to tell you just eat your leafy greens or eat this or take these vitamins and everything will be great. That might not work for you. And so connecting with that community of people just to gain an understanding, not just from, hey, what diet and what exercise I should do, but what gives you hope? What do you hold on to? And I think that's
mm,
a nice little maybe a segue into you're a father. You've got three beautiful daughters, and I am really curious. How have you been open with your daughters and transferred some of that hope that you carry into them, knowing that do they know that you are a cancer survivor or live with cancer?
mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, as you know, fatherhood is an amazing gift and a privilege. Um, when I was diagnosed, we just had Abby, and we've subsequently been blessed with Ellie and Naomi. the past few years. And I think it's been a privilege, really, to share that sense of we are in need of hope together. And just because I'm the parent, the authority figure, it doesn't mean that I have any less need of God, of pursuing faith, of hope. And I explained to her, I mean, just more in general terms, that cancer is kind of like these bad cells, and this drug helps to fight this bad cancer. And it's kind of funny, like she's had these Terry Fox runs to raise awareness for cancer, and one day she came back and she says, I'm thankful for this drug because that way you don't have to get your leg cut off like Terry Fox. And it's just like I just love the childlike appreciation for, wow, yeah, it's amazing that I don't have to get my leg cut off. Um, and we were recently at a leukemia fundraiser, and it was a joy to see so many families, so many patients, others who have walked the same road, and really share with Abby and Ellie, Naomi. We're here because many people have sacrificed their time, their money, so that others could have life or a better chance of it. And so, yeah, I think it's passing on hope, but also passing on gratitude that we're not in this alone. We're here because others have labored, have worked so hard to care for other people that they might not even physically see. And so I think I've just tried to cultivate that practice of, yeah, we have hope. We can also be gracious and grateful for every day.
Yeah, inviting our children to participate in raising awareness. I'm a crazy advocate for that. When 3 years ago, when my Crohn's came out of remission, it was in a drug-induced remission. My body rejected the medication after 15 years. My wife really took charge with my son, with Willem, and he was always a crafter, loves to create stuff, and was creating these pendants and my really spearheaded by my wife of, hey, we're going to raise awareness and raise money for the Crohn's Foundation. And we explained to Willem and my daughter at the time what was going on, and she said, what do you want to call this little business? And his little brain was acting like a little brain, and said poo poo pendants. And he just laughed. He thought it was the funniest thing, Crohn's and washroom stuff. But it has stuck, and he's raised hundreds and hundreds of dollars on his own for the Crohn's Foundation. And the point is if we hide who we are, what our version of normal is from our kids, especially from our families, how do they truly know us? And so inviting them in along and to create the story. That's amazing. I love how your little daughter's brain works, and it was I can imagine running this fundraiser or running the Terry Fox run and thinking in her mind, it's like, I'm so glad my dad has his legs.
Yeah, I love kids.
Yeah. It's you stepped into vulnerability. You stepped into hope. I know there's people that are going to listen to this or see this on social media that are really afraid to be vulnerable, but yet have maybe this desire inside of them to share, and maybe it's a deeper desire to connect. What encouragement do you want to leave for someone who wants to and has that desire, but is afraid?
Yeah, it's a great thought. I think the first thing would be, I think, recognizing that we're all fighting a battle that no one knows about. Seen it time and time again that I can have assumptions. Oh, this person seems to be radiant and joyous. I don't know if I want to share with this person because I don't want them to be down or whatever it is. And I've actually found that as I've shared with people, hey, actually, I'm not doing so well. Like maybe the side effects of my medication are kind of getting me down or whatever it is. That more often than not, others they want to show care. They want to show curiosity, and it's been an open space to build a deeper relationship there. Now, that said, there has been times where it's opened up and the response has not been what I wanted. I shared about, oh no, my side effects from medication and whatnot, and someone says, oh yeah, I had a bad cold last week, and so it's a little off-putting. But I'd say, okay, no, man, that's tough, that's tough. And I kind of move on. But I'd want to encourage, as we share our stories, what we're going through, most people will lend you their ear, lend you their vulnerability as well. And it's an open door, an opportunity for amazing relationship and connection. And perhaps even before you share openly, I'd recommend, writing some of your thoughts down. Use a feelings wheel. Try to identify, are you feeling hurt or depressed or discouraged? To give you those words to share. Hey, I'm feeling discouraged today. I could use a hand with X. So that we're not just kind of laying everything down unfiltered without clarity. And again, I would want to bring up counseling again. Counseling is an amazing way to have someone listen, to share perspective, insights. And like our counselor said to us, it's like, think of me as a paid friend. And I love that because I could just share openly and I didn't have to worry about, judgment or anything. They were there to listen. And so, yeah, I'll just recap, kind of get an awareness of your feelings and journal or whatever it is. Pursue counseling or a friend that you can open up to, and then take that risk of being vulnerable with others.
Yeah, awareness of feelings. That was great what you said. I was just looking at my notes. I'm feeling X. I need help with Y.
Mm-hmm.
That is so powerful when it's distilled down into something that is it is brevity and clarity. It's brief and clear.
Mm-hmm.
And you might need 10 things. But if you have one person reaching out to you that says, how can I support? Just be clear, right? That person might not have capacity for 10 things, but what is the one thing that you need? I am feeling discouraged. I just want to go grab a coffee with someone. Are you free? Or I am feeling in pain and not able to leave the house. I need support watching my kids for an hour. Just be crystal clear. And you will run into people who will say, no, I don't have time for that. And that's fine. Don't, but know that one rejection does not mean everybody will reject you. Yep. I want to be clear on that. One rejection does not mean everyone will reject your request. And be bold in that. It's an amazing share. Awareness of feelings, pursue counsel or a friend, get it outside of your body, talk to someone. And then take that step of vulnerability. Practice sharing your story. Write it down. Write down your story. And if you want to share it, there's people who want to listen. And not listen out of just that self-serving place, but out of authentic curiosity, that place of, tell me more. How can I support?
Yeah, totally. And I think something that really, I want to be clear, what I'm sharing now is after many years of wrestling and struggling. I know that one of the biggest challenges early on that Jessica shared with me was I don't know what's going on in your head. I'm trying to guess, but I don't know how you're feeling. I don't know how I can help. And in those early stages of diagnosis and uncertainty, um, I felt this internal pressure, like, oh, I gotta keep strong for my family. I can't show any kind of weakness. And my foolish perspective was, I'm going to be a strong, silent figure, and that will help them be inspired by my example. And that way, I won't worry them. But ironically, it was because of my silence that Jessica worried. She's like, I don't know what he's feeling. Is he feeling depressed or angry or frustrated or suicidal, whatever it is? And it was during a counseling session that I finally shared that. And she said, no, I need to hear from you. I feel safe actually when you share that you're down, that you're in need of help. That way I know how to support you. And that was such a revelation to me. I was living on this stereotype definition of manly strength or perseverance when what my what my bride needed from me was that vulnerability. And I thank her for pushing me towards sharing that because that's brought us a deeper intimacy that we'll never have had before that.
Yeah, it's great that you acknowledge that it's taken a long time. It's taken some counseling to open up and be vulnerable. And there, I know people who are just an open book. They're right from the get-go. Hi, my name is so and so. This is what I have. And I've also met a lot of people who are timid and nervous and don't want to share and just want to have that, like, oh, I've got it all together.
Mm.
And I just want to break that down,
Mm.
right? If we want to end the stigma that surrounds this, we need to step into our story and feel comfortable with our story, and maybe comfortable enough to share it, but be comfortable in that story.
Mm-hmm.
That's one way we're going to end the stigma that surrounds this. And so hearing how Jessica had said, no, I need to hear this,
Yeah.
I know Jessica, I could just imagine how she was like, the emotion that she's wearing on her face and the emotion she's carrying when she said that. How did you feel? Was it a sigh of relief, or was it, oh no, I still need to bury this?
I think it was, there's still some part of me that held on to, I gotta bury, gotta repress this. But for the most part, it was relieving. I, I know I wanted to share. I, I needed that external permission that I wasn't giving myself. And I know it's been a theme amongst the other episodes you've recorded, and I echo that as well. Sometimes it's hard for us to give ourselves permission, and we need others to give us that space and that openness to share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, giving yourselves permission. It's so hard. It's something that we share in common. Is like, even though I'm in this project, I still struggle to share. And there's things I haven't shared, and maybe one day I will share. But it's, it's your story. And the beauty of your story is you get to choose what you want to share and how much you share. And maybe over years and years, you'll share more and more and more. But it's your story. And I'm just grateful for you, Felix. I'm grateful that you are here today sharing vulnerably, because it will unlock more vulnerability. And I'm thankful that you're living your best normal, and whatever that looks like. And I'm just grateful that God has put you in my life, and in a way that we can build each other up and support each other, even from a distance over these years. And so, maybe my last thought here, your last thought is, as we look to wrap up, what is one or two things that you want to leave for our listeners? What's some encouragement that you'd like to leave for people?
Yeah, I think excuse me, one major thing I'd say is, I know wherever you're at, wherever we're at in your journey of health, whatever, you don't need to wait for a catastrophic life illness like Crohn's or leukemia to be really intentional with our lives. One thing I've learned, and I'm sure you've learned over your time with your illness, is how often we're living under the weight of expectations of others, or stereotypes, or self-imposed, I should do this because of blank. And I think I've been reminded time and time again that pursuing things just because we should pursue it might not be the best way to look at things. And I've realized how important just saying, oh, no, I'm going to pass on that because I want to pursue Y instead. Just knowing whether it's career path or it's vocation or a social engagement, that we do have that power of choice, and sometimes we give that up to please or get the approval of other people and live with that performance mindset. So that's the first thing, is just be proactive with our own choices. And secondly, I'd say I want to reiterate, remember that everyone is fighting a battle you know nothing about. And perhaps that's ourselves. We're wrestling with something and we need help. But we think of friends and family, those we see on the street. How can we think just more compassionately, more graciously to that person? Because we don't know. They might have just been diagnosed with cancer coming off an optometrist appointment. They might have lost a loved one, wherever it is. And so maybe someone's like really frustrated or angry, or they seem like they're off. I know I've been challenged to think and express empathy, even inside, even if I don't say something. It's choosing to think well of the other person, whatever they're going through.
Two important things to end our recording on: the power of choice, and everyone is fighting something, and it could be something small, it could be something life-changing. Again, Felix, I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, and I know this episode is going to tug at people's heartstrings. And so if you are listening and you have questions, or you'd like to connect, or you're curious about telling your story, reach out to me at invisiblecondition.com. Also, in the show notes, there's a couple links to how to get a hold of Felix if you want to connect with him and hear about his story a little bit more. Head to the website or wherever you get your podcasts. And selfishly, I just love for you to follow on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. I just want to keep spreading this message out, not from a selfish perspective, but from a place of, I know that this will change people's lives by this power of sharing about our invisible condition. So with that, thanks again, Felix, and thanks everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, Tim.